Now let me introduce today's guest, Kim Hopkins. Kim is the founder and president of the Electric Connection of Los Angeles. He started the Electric Connection in 1979, and over the years, the company has grown into a 35-employee company providing electrical services to property owners and businesses throughout the Los Angeles metropolitan area. And as mentioned before, the Electric Connection believes in quality and offers a lifetime guarantee on all their work. Kim, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. A lot of interest in this topic, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So take it away.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you, Dan, and Matthew and Cameron for helping set up this webinar. I really appreciate it. I can tell you that I have zero experience, guys. Whoever's listening to this, I've never done a webinar before, so be gentle with your comments. I will also say there's a bit of a glitch here. Let's see if I can fix this.
Oh, things look good.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. So today's topics are going to be dealing with the new insurance requirements for your apartment's aging electrical panels. That's the main subject here. I think many of you at this point have learned that this has become something of a thing in the LA area. What's happened is with all the fires in California and earthquakes and whatever else happens here, the insurance companies have gotten very, very shy about insuring companies without a lot of safety protection on their behalf to prevent them from having to, pay too much money out to their customers. So what they've done is they've really taken a close look at the electrical situation in these buildings with these old electrical panels that are no longer, well, they're not per National Electric Code for sure, but they're antiquated, and some of the circuit breakers don't work anymore correctly, and they can cause fires and whatnot. So the insurance companies have a list, which I'll get into in a minute, but basically you may have already gotten a letter like this that basically says from your insurance company, hire a licensed electrical contractor to thoroughly inspect the electrical system in each building covered by our insurance company and replace any unsafe electrical panels within the building with modern approved panels. So the question is, what are those panels that are bad and what are the panels that are good? So here's a list of the panels that insurance companies don't like. They've been proven to not work properly at this point, causing fires necessarily, short circuits, degrading power. So basically, you've got Zinsco Sylvania, you've got Federal Pacific, Challenger, Push-O-Matic, and Eaton Cutler Hammer. If you have one of these kind of panels, insurance companies are going to be telling you you should replace these panels. So how do you do that? Like, what's your next step if you've gotten a letter like this from the insurance company, or if you're buying a building that's in escrow sometimes, or you're selling a building that's in escrow, this situation is likely to come up. So how do you approach resolving this situation if you do get a letter? So here's a little list I made up, and I'm just going to go over it bit by bit here. So you hire a qualified electrical contractor to evaluate the subpanels and the main panel on the property. So that's what you do. You just get someone out there that's experienced with this kind of work. And the electrical contractor will be able to determine the kind of electrical panels and whether they are approved or not approved by the insurance company. And if you're lucky, if the panels are in compliance and the electrical contractor, the contractor is basically going to generate a letter that basically says to the insurance company that all the panels are in good shape, we've investigated the building. In other words, done exactly what they sent you the letter to have done. And at that point, you're done. You're now in compliance with what they ask you for. Unfortunately, if the panels are not in compliance, then the electrical contractor should be able to then give you a bid to replace the panels. So if they do that, then the insurance company can say, oh, gee, they're not in compliance. Well, you need to get in compliance within a month, that kind of thing. And fortunately, there's a way around that because this work can't really be done in a month to get it organized often, like if it's a bigger project. So the electrical contractor can provide a letter to be sent to the insurance company, basically telling them look, the work's in progress and we're moving forward and we'll be done soon. The way that the insurance company is going to know that that's true is, like my experience with my property management companies, I send them an invoice that they sign and say, we're approving this contract. And then the insurance company knows the owner or the property management company is serious about hiring that electrician. So the next thing is, and this is only when the work has to be done, of course, the electrical contractor gets a permit for the work. That's pretty obvious. And that should happen before the work begins, typically. Then the electrical contractor works with the building manager. Whoever's managing that, they have to give tenants 24-hour notice. I think most people are quite aware of this issue. And we have to say, we're replacing your panel and we're going to be in there for a limited time, just for one day. And then later, when the inspector comes to inspect the work, there'll be a second 24-hour notice that the inspector is going to drop by and with the electrician and look at that particular project. So there'll be twice that we go into the tenant. But if it's done, the job is done properly, the tenant's only disturbed twice. Once replacing the panel and once when the inspector has to come back and look at the job. One thing about that is the electrical contractor should have sufficient manpower to just be in each tenant's unit for no more than 2 to 4 hours max. Maybe it's 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe 4 at the most in a really difficult situation. But to have one guy, I'm just picturing this one, like one old electrician, and he really knows everything and he's working away at it, and I'm almost done, I'll get done real soon. You know, that's one way to go. Or you can have a crew of 2 or 3 guys to zip in there and that they've done, you know, so many, almost hundreds of these kind of panels, so that it's like almost like an afterthought for them to get it done. And usually that's a better way to go, because the tenants particularly don't like tradesmen working in their, you know, own personal space. I think we're all aware of that. So when the work's complete, then the contractor meets with the electrical inspector to inspect the work, as I mentioned. And then finally, when it's all done, the contractor provides evidence that all the work's complete, the job's been approved, and sends that to the property management company or the owner, who then sends it to the insurance company, and you're done. So it's just that simple. Anyway, the point is, if you hire the right contractor, this is going to go a lot smoother than if you hire someone that says that they do this kind of work, and it turns out halfway through the job or even before they start, somehow things can go wrong. So here's a list. This is like the minimum requirements that I would recommend when you're looking for a contractor to do this kind of work. Obviously, the electrical contractor needs a C10 electrical license, and it needs to be current. And they should carry a minimum of $1 million liability insurance. Like, I think my company has 3 million liability plus an umbrella coverage on top of that. You need to make sure that the contractor is up to date with their workers' comp policy. They may send you one, but just make sure that it didn't expire, because this is something that I've noticed in the industry, not just with electricians, but pretty much other licensed contractors. Somehow workers' comp can fall apart without anybody noticing in their own company. So just make sure of that. You can go to the state contractors license board to get all this information, by the way. Make sure they have a minimum of a 1-year warranty on their work. Like, personally, we have a lifetime warranty on our workmanship. We can't really have a lifetime on the equipment because we didn't make it. But in terms of the standard of workmanship, and if anything goes wrong with the wire connections or whatever, that's a lifetime for us. And what I mean by that is it's a lifetime for the building. So even if you sell the building, you can transfer that lifetime warranty onto the next buyer if you wish. Oh, let's see. So then a very important thing, really important, is how experienced is this electrician? So you need to ask them, provide references for previously done sub-panel replacement work. If you've got a duplex, no big deal. You know, it's not that big of a deal. If they've done a couple of, you know, smaller jobs, that's fine. But what if you have a 75-unit building? And we get those. We've done many 75-unit buildings. You really need to have someone that's experience with these larger projects to make sure it's going to go right. In my opinion, and I've seen it where we've taken over projects from other customers. So, okay. I mentioned before, a contractor should be very experienced with tenant relations so that when you open up the door, even if they've been given notice, they can be kind of cranky. They can have a dog, they can have a baby, they can have a lot of things. They cannot want to let you in. It's the wrong day for them. Their astrological chart says no. You know, whatever it is, it's important to handle those tenants properly and politely. And so it's good if the workmen are trained on how to handle tenant management. Another very, very important thing, and this is going back to the beginning of the project, when you don't even know yet if you have to do a project, like what kind of panels do you have at that point? If you get a very experienced electrician, they may take a look at the letter from the insurance company, which is always a very important issue from my point of view. I'm always asking, first off, send me the letter or whatever. Why are you doing this job? Who told you to do it? And what did they say in writing? Because sometimes you can avoid thousands and thousands of dollars depending on specifically the wording of the letter. So it's important to get a contractor that's familiar with the ins and outs of the legalities of what insurance companies are asking for. And then finally, and especially on bigger projects, make sure the contractor is organized and has a good plan to schedule the work and get it done properly. And by, like, imagine a duplex, it's like, okay, we'll be there for 3 days, no problem. Or 1 day, who knows? But like a 125 unit complex, now we're getting into some complexities. And so here's 2 things that my company does. We use a Google Calendar, and we say on each day which units are going to be done, and everyone's familiar with this. This is done for 24-hour notice, but also to keep track of what's going on. And this is available to anyone involved in the project, like, because it's a Google kind of thing. So, you know, the owner, the apartment manager, my company, or, you know, all of us are familiar with what's going to happen on each day long into the future on these bigger projects. And then on the right hand side, we made a computer program basically that designed to keep track of every aspect of these jobs. And on the left you can see it says unit number, and then the date the job is scheduled to be done, and then was it completed? Great. And which crew did that work, you know? And then over on the right, this is an example that hasn't been completed yet. Like, if there was patching to be done, and sometimes there is, sometimes there's not, depends. Okay, was it completed? And then finally, there's an inspection that has to be scheduled. So we put that in advance. And then ultimately, is it approved or not? That's the final issue that we need to know. Once that's done, and imagine though, this goes to, like, there's 14, or I guess there's 9 units here. Imagine 87 or 122. It really makes a difference to stay organized. So look for organization and ask the electrician, have they done this kind of work before? What's the largest project they've done? Get references. I strongly recommend that. And with that, I hope I haven't been you know, too amateuristic here, and I'm about to turn it over.
All right, Kim, I know you were concerned about this being your first webinar, but you did a wonderful job. You know, the attendees today don't know about our conversation yesterday and you expressing concerns about there being questions. Well, we've got tons of questions to go over, so I hope you have some time to stick around and answer these. And I want to take Sally's question first. It's actually a question that I kind of wrote down beforehand, but you know, when you go and you replace the main electrical panel, you know, what else goes along with it? Do you automatically need to replace the sub panels? And then what about the old wiring in the building? You know, I know in one of my buildings, I still have cloth wiring. Does all that need to go and be replaced? And then what about the connection to the electrical utility? Do you need to replace that as well? Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I would call that a multiple question, but typically what we do is, my process is, I always ask the whoever the customer is who calls, look, let me see the letter and let me start with that. Then we're going to send out not a salesperson, but our field production manager who's going to go over this project. Now, sometimes main electrical panels also include all the sub panels in the same location, like in a down in a parking lot or outside in a doghouse, that kind of thing. And there are no sub panels in the apartment units themselves. They're all downstairs or wherever they are. And so we can just on the outside of the building go through and we will look at the main panel. We will look at all the sub panels. We will see what kind of condition they're in and the age. And also at the same time, just by looking in those panels, we'll be able to see what kind of wire there is. Is there any aluminum wire? Is it cloth covered wires? So we can tell a lot from just looking at where the switch gear is and where the sub panels are. That pretty much tells us what we need to know about the buildings. And based on what we see, we're able to evaluate the project. And sometimes what we'll see is, oh, this is a square D. This isn't even one the insurance companies want to do. So already, essentially from the insurance point of view, the customer is off the hook. They don't need to replace the sub panels or the main. However, like sometimes we'll see they're in very poor condition or like slightly poor condition. And we'll say, look, we can recondition these panels for X amount of dollars if you want. And, we can send a letter to the insurance companies stating as such that we did this. Or, there's no obligation, but the insurance company may come themselves and tell you that the panels are in poor shape at some point. Mostly the people that come out from insurance companies don't know that much. So it's more like when the panels are the proper, they're not required, not mandated to be changed. Our recommendation is, yes, you should still fix up the old panels that are able to be kept there because they'll be good for another 20 years without particular problems that might come up unexpectedly in the middle of the night on a Friday night. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and what about cloth wiring? Does that okay to keep in your building? Or does that need to be replaced at this point?
I would say, okay, there's two kinds of situations. One is cloth wiring in what's called knob and tube, and that's literally just the cloth wire run across, through the walls and attics and basement like clothesline. They're just wrapped around little porcelain parts, and you can literally see them. And what happens is, as they get older, I'm talking 50 years older, they get dry. The cloth gets dry, and then it gets brittle, and then it starts crumbling. And when it crumbles, you literally have hot wires with no insulation in places that people can actually touch. But I don't mean tenants necessarily, but just anyone that's working on the building, like let's say in the attic space or the crawl spaces, they actually, this is a real dangerous situation. And at that point, there's no question, at this point, knob and tube, which is basically 100 years old at this point, needs to be replaced. And that would be a complete rewire of the entire building. Mostly this is with single family residences that comes up, not so much with apartments. The other kind of cloth wire situation is they're run through steel flexible conduit, almost always. Sometimes what's called black pipe, which is it's sort of like NASA grade electrical protection. But in either of those cases, it's protected just fine. And unless the wires are so old that they're crumbling so that you can't, like when you go to replace a light fixture, you really can't use those wires anymore because the insulation just crumbles the minute you try to use them. You can probably leave the cloth wires alone. But there are other situations with bad wiring that we have discovered, and we just say, look, this is dangerous because it was just done poorly to begin with. But ultimately, cloth wires in metal conduit is fairly safe.
Got it. We got a number of questions here asking about the cost of panel replacement. Is there any kind of rule of thumb or overall estimate? magnitude that people should be looking at if they are required to do this work?
Yeah, I can answer that.
And
Okay,
I know every situation is different, but
yeah,
maybe to give some, magnitude of size and cost.
sure. There's a way. First, we check and see what kind of car the customer drives. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, what we do, we have standard pricing. Don't worry about that. But give or take, it's like around $1,000 per panel is what the average is. Maybe 1,050 is specifically. Some are more and some are less, but of the hundreds that we've done, basically it's about 1,050 currently. 2 years ago, it was 900 or 800, 700, inflation really took a bite of this, especially with the equipment prices going up. And also there's one other fee sometimes that comes up. That would be doing $150 worth of patching. Sometimes we have to tear out a panel and we don't have to do any patching. It's the new panel covers the whole of the old panel just fine. There are times we have to move a panel or reverse it from direction it's going, various things like that, where we do have to do patching. And if we do, it's 150 for the patching. And like I said, over the hundreds we've done, the average is about 1,050 for the sub panels. And in terms of the main panel, forget it.
Yeah.
We really have to, there's no chance we can say with the main panels, maybe it's $2,000 or $3,000 for like a duplex, that kind of thing. I think our record is, I don't know, I think it was $350,000 to do a multi-building complex with underground conduit that had to be done by the city of Los Angeles by Water and Power. We didn't get all that money, but it just cost the customer that to get the job done.
Got it. And so those prices, does that include your fees as well? Does it include permits? Does it include whatever you have to have the electric company come out and do?
What we do,
all extra.
Yeah, we charge exactly what we charge. What we get charged for the permit, and whatever that permit is, exactly that cost we pass on to the customer as a separate issue, is the way we do it. And then we charge $75 for our office processing fee. Also, there's another fee when we are done with the job. We meet the inspector. Typically, we'll charge $250 for that, because sometimes the inspectors don't show. We have to come a second time. There's various reasons why, but we charge those prices.
Got it. Brian's got a question here. He wants to know, in upgrading the electrical panel, is there a major cost difference between 400 amps and 600 amps for the main panel?
Yes. That's my one-word answer.
And he had a second question. Does it take longer to get approvals through LADWP?
It takes 1.5 years longer. I'll explain that. A 400 amp service or lower in the city of Los Angeles for the Department of Los Angeles Water and Power, there's two kinds of inspections and service planners that are in charge of those projects. 400 amps or lower is the average service planner that also does residential. That can be done without involving water and power engineering. And if we can do our own engineering and talk to that particular service planner and work out what's called the meter spot, and we get all that done, this could take a matter of a week. It's like, great, no problem. And overhead is typically where the power comes from. And that's a happy day for us and for the customer. Anything over 400 amps, it has to go to LADWP engineering. This is when they're very backed up or they're very slow. I don't care which, but the result is it takes at least 1 year to get the information from the electrical engineer of water and power as to the job that they want you to do. So it's even hard to bid a job like that, other than to say, we're estimating, assuming it's done the way we've engineered the project and submitted to them, this is what it should cost. But we never know what they're going to say, because they'll say, we don't have enough power in that area. or the transformer has this much capability right now, so you have to do it this way. You have to come from a different direction than you're in now. There may be underground that wasn't there before. There's so many variables that there's just no way to know. So we can't, it's just much more expensive, and it's much more time consuming. And then additionally, in terms of the permit, you have to go through plan check for anything over 400 amps as well. And that's not that big of a deal, but what it implies is typically you're going to pay about $1,200 worth of engineering fees to get the job is looked at by our electrical engineer, and for them to draw up engineered plans, then them to go to plan check and get them approved through plan check, which usually takes 2 trips, you know, like that. And then ultimately we submit them to a Department of Water and Power engineer, who then takes their sweet time to a year and a half later. That's our record is a year and a half, and we just got one signed, I think yesterday. That was a year and a half ago is when we started that project. That was for a very large project that actually was completely changed by the electrical engineer. So we had to do the job in a different way, but that's the process. Now, one other thing, Edison water, like that's Water and Power, the city of Los Angeles. When you get into Southern California Edison, their rule is if it's 400 amps or more, you have to go to engineering. So that means that even with a 400 amp, you would have to go through engineering, and then there's time involved, like I was referring to before. That's my answer to them.
Let me ask your opinion on something, Kim. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a number of initiatives throughout the LA area coming from the county, city of Los Angeles, and soon to be other jurisdictions that want to make cooling in multifamily units, so the installation of air conditioning units, mandatory as a habitability issue. There's also a number of green building issues where property owners could be asked to remove all gas appliances and replace ovens with electric ovens and heaters with electric heaters and so forth. You know, in your opinion, are people going to need to upgrade if they have a 200 amp service? Are they going to need to upgrade their panels in any case?
I think that is, it seems really unlikely that there's going to be a retroactive ban on electric cooking equipment.
Oh, it's coming. They're talking about it, and they're trying to figure out how to get owners to pay for it and to try to get funding to help owners pay for it.
Okay, well, it implies to me, like these buildings are engineered for gas heating, gas electrical. It was not the issue, you know. When you have gas heating, or you like a gas water heater, that kind of thing, or if you have gas cooking, obviously it's not electrical. Like those things, electrical heating takes a lot of electrical energy to do. The buildings, let's say you have a 20-unit building and you've got like a 400 amp service. That was what it was engineered for, and that's what it has. If you have to add electric cooking to that, let's say, or electric heating or both, you're going to end up with not enough power in that building. So then you're going to have to change the main from like a 400 amp to a 600 or 800 amp to do that. It's enormously expensive. But then on top of that, a lot of people don't understand or realize that the infrastructure in our city of Los Angeles with the electrical distribution of water and power is not large enough. Like I'm already thinking, how are we going to ever plug in all these electric cars? You're just, right. So I think there's going to be a lot of pushback just from a practical point of view of how to get it done. Maybe it'll become a thing where the owners of these buildings say, yeah, we can't wait to do it. Like just, I'll tell you what, when Water and Power says we can do it, we'll let you know. Because I don't know what's going to happen, but there's just not enough infrastructure to handle that, like a blanket change like that throughout all of Los Angeles.
Yeah, there's not enough tenant money to pay for the cost of electricity either. But anyway, I appreciate your opinion. I was curious about it. Joe here's got a question. He's asking about the supply chain issues. Says sometimes there's a long delay in getting the panels. How do you handle that?
Well, you have a good relationship with wholesale houses for one thing. If you do enough volume, they kind of treat you nicely. Uh, for the sub panels, there's not much of a problem. Maybe if you have a really unusual kind of brand that has to be used for some particular reason, it might be a challenge. But so I'd say there's not currently, after, post pandemic, after 2 years, if not, about a year ago, things loosened up that way. That I noticed they didn't lower their prices, but nevertheless, the panels are more accessible. However, so we're not having a problem getting sub panels, even in quantity, like 75 at a time, we can do that, which lowers the price, we buy them all at one time. But what is a problem still is on switchgear, like a 1200 amp panel, there's certain parts, components to that are hard to get and sometimes take a few months to get. The good news is it takes a few months to get water and power to do their thing anyway. So usually if the contractor is on top of it, they can arrange when we finally have permission to do a job, we have all the equipment to get that job done.
Got it. Got it. Patricia's got a question here. She wants you to explain the process to upgrade a building's power banks, which is, she understands, more complex than individual unit sub panel upgrades.
I'm not sure what that means, power bank. Does that mean like where all the meters are with the main and it's just sitting there and is that called a power bank? Maybe?
I was hoping you would know what a power bank is.
Maybe it means a bank that has a lot of money. It's a power bank.
Maybe if Patricia could quickly type what a power bank is, then she into the chat, that would be, or into the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer, Tricia, if I know exactly what you mean on that one.
Yeah, because she has a later question. To replace the power bank, she said Southern California Edison told her she'd have to shut down the electricity at her building for 4 full days and put her tenants up at a hotel. All right, well, we'll see.
Oh, wait, no, let me answer that one. That
Okay.
I can answer, and that may be what Tricia's most concerned about. Yeah, look, you remember when I said in the seminar, get a guy that has a lot of experience, a lot of past experience with larger projects. There are ways to almost always avoid tenant habitability issues. For sure, changing out subpanels, you can do it within the same day time period between 8 and 5, and there's no issue. When it comes to main panels, there are workarounds where you can either get temporary power or you can do half the panel first and second, and you can do the main, and maybe you can knock it out in one day for any particular tenant to not have power. I believe we have, of all the buildings we've done, we have never had to move a tenant out of a building. So there are ways, Tricia, there are ways.
Great. We got a number of requests for you to repeat information and so forth. I was wondering, would you be willing to make your slides available? We would distribute them to anybody registered today by through a PDF. Would that be something you'd be willing to allow us to do?
Yeah, sure.
All right, good. So anybody who's asking for the links to the website or the list of sub panels that were no longer good, we will send out copies of the slides, and so you'll be able to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Send it to anyone who wants it. It's fine. And again, there's even more information on the website under property management that goes into more details about these same subjects.
Got it. Romy's got a question here. Should all the crew members who come out to do all this electrical work have electrician's licenses?
No, in fact, that's not how it works. The company that you contract with, their license is the license that you need to pay attention to.
Got it. And all those workers fall under that license, I assume.
You need to have a journeyman that has a certificate as a journeyman, but that's not a license. That's a totally different thing. The license is with the contractor.
Here's an easy question from Diana. Do you work in Thousand Oaks?
Yeah, but I'm surprised that there would be a job in Thousand Oaks unless it's not a panel replacement. That wasn't so much happening there, I don't think.
Okay, probably because of all the new construction.
Yeah, but we do a lot, hey, new construction is not an issue, and we don't do new construction, by the way. If it's brand new, we're not gonna do it. We'll do anything that's already built, we just go in and evaluate whatever the issue is and take care of it, but
Got
we're not, we're not new construction contractors. It's a whole different animal of who you hire, what their experience is, how much you have to pay them, you know, I'm more into, I don't know, craftsmanship, I guess you'd say.
Okay. For all these apartment owners out there who live in single family homes, are you seeing these same issues getting insurance companies requiring panel replacements at single family homes?
I'm absolutely not seeing that. Insurance companies, I haven't seen a single incident where they're asking for this to be done in a single family residence. It's all about multi-unit commercial type situations.
Got it. Got it. They always like to hassle us. All right. Well, Greg's got a question here. When he's looking to buy an apartment building, that's a refreshing thought to invest in California. He wants to know, how does he do the due diligence to check the electric panel?
Hire a quality electrician to check.
Great. Yeah, I mean, you should always use a building inspector when you buy a property, right? Some kind
Well,
of
yeah, what we
inspector.
do is this. We have a lot of home inspectors, we call them, who go out and they look at single family residences and commercial buildings. We say, give us the report, and then part of that report is going to be the electrical. So we take a look at the electrical, then we send out our own technician, and he goes over point by point what the home inspector or building inspector saw, and we come up with an evaluation of that. Or we just go out there and look at the electrical without an inspection report beforehand, and we just give them a general idea of what's going on.
And about how much do you charge for that?
You know, not very much. It's about the square footage of the building or buildings. You know, I don't want to say and be wrong. Our minimum is 150. This would be for like a 2,000 square foot house or lower, but
Right.
maybe 350 for, you know, a commercial 4-unit building or something like that.
Got it. Martin wants to know, what brand of sub panels are your first choice?
Simmons is probably the best value right now. We could use Square D, but we're at the moment we're working with Simmons a lot.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so Patricia says power bank is the meters for each unit that are maintained by Southern California Edison. She said maybe there's another term for it.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just wanted to give you that clarification. Now we all know what a power bank is. Thank you. All right. So let me ask you, get a letter from your insurance company. What's the best way to get started on dealing with
let
it?
me go back to Trish's thing about she
Okay.
defined the power bank thing. I can answer a question now.
Okay, great.
So she's referring to, Trish, I think you're referring to the feed of the wires that come from Edison, and they go into a main, and then there's a bunch of meters, and then next to the meters there's a main breaker that controls the sub panel. So everything but the sub panel belongs to Southern California Edison. And what they're saying to you is it's going to take 4 days for a typical electrician to replace all that stuff. And, you know, I'm not going to say it isn't going to take 4 days. I'm just going to say that it's never taken us 4 days to replace that kind of stuff. That's what I could say.
Got it. Brian's got a EV station question. He wants to know, should he wait to install EV stations until they're more advanced? And wants to know, can you install them at the same time as the main panel? That's his question.
Okay, it'll take a bit to answer this one, but here we go. You don't have to wait on EV stations because they're going to do the same thing. Just like for the last 100 years, you flip a switch up and the light comes on. The technology is never going to change in terms of providing power to the car from the EV station or EV charger. That's what we call them. So you could buy the simplest one possible for apartments. You don't need all the bells and whistles. You just need one that actually works, and they can set the time for when they want it to turn on and turn off. And, the basics will come, the basic ones will come with the things you need. Now, in apartment buildings, there is a possible way to get it done at no charge if you're willing for the tenants to pretty much be responsible for the bill every time they use it. There's companies out there that will do all kinds of engineering and try to squeeze power from the existing panel that your main has available in the building. And maybe they can come, let's say there's a 20-unit building, maybe they can come up with like 5 car charging stations that can happen. I'll just keep it simple. And it may not cost anything. Like there's programs by Department of Water and Power, funded by California, I believe, that allow for rebates and whatnot. However, it's not the same as every tenant having their own power station or EV car charger, whatever you want to call it, at all. And typically on an older building, you're not going to have enough power to give every tenant the option to do that. But one little trick is you don't have to have full power to charge the batteries of these cars. You can go way down from like all the way from like 48 amps down to 30 amps, down to 24 amps, down to even 15 amps. And the less you have, the more units are capable of being supported by the existing main switchgear in the building. And finally, if we're already, let's just say it's a big complex and we're going to upgrade from a 400 to a 600 amp, we will always give the option, well, how about an 800 amp? And then you can also have all your tenants have a EV car charger, and it doesn't relatively cost that much more if you're already spending a lot of money with water and power and whatnot to upgrade from a 400 to a 600. It's not that much more to upgrade from a 400 to an 800, allowing you to have enough power available for EV chargers.
Got it. So, if somebody has one of these insurance letters and they kind of want to get an idea of what it's going to cost to do a replacement, and they reach out to you, are you able to give them some information on the phone, or do you need to go out and assess the specific situation? And if so, how much does that cost?
Perfect. The answer is yes. We can do everything you just said, and it costs $150 to do it. What I would do, and this is, if anyone calls in, this is what happens. At the moment, I'm personally handling each one of these because I found that with, my dispatchers have a certain amount of knowledge and they can dispatch and answer many questions about many things. But when it comes to this is a relatively expensive, potentially job. And at the same time, sometimes I can tell by what the letter says or what the customer calling in says, it's not even what they need, or this happens or that happens. So I'm personally taking each job and by the hand and I have a conversation with each customer. And this is what happens. I say, did you get a letter? And they say, yes. I say, great. Email me the letter. I want to read it and I'm going to call you back. And then I read the letter. That gives me a lot of information. And then I call them back and we discuss what's going to happen next. Sometimes they'll say, I've got 11 buildings. Sometimes they'll say, I have this one little duplex I need to get fixed. Whatever they say is going to depend on what I say back. But, ultimately, I can give a ballpark depending on what it is. If they say, I've got a 400 amp service and it's a brand that's okay. So if I don't do the main panel and I only have to do like 5 sub panels, I might say, okay, well, maybe are they down where the main is, or are they in each unit? And if they answer they're in each unit, I'll say, well, probably it's about $6,000. I could do that sometimes, but never are we going to commit to anything or send them, a quote until we've looked at all of like, say, the 6 units, seen what's in there, seen, oh yeah, it's true, but unfortunately you have to move 2 of those panels to a different location. They're no longer legal there, that kind of thing. So, but we can give a ballpark on the phone sometimes. That's what and then if we go out, we charge $150 for evaluating the building. It doesn't even cover our costs. We're out there we're going to spend several hours on any particular project. we want to go through every unit if the sub panels are inside. If they're outside, we don't need to go into the units. But if they're inside each unit, we have to look at every single one to give you a very precise bid. And then additionally, we have to generate letters and we have to probably do some research in the office. And when we're done, we're going to have a pretty precise information that's not going to change when the job is done, or that evaluation can be used to get other quotes as well if the customer so desires.
Got it. Well,
Oh,
you
and then
better
by the
stop.
way, we give as if it's that important, but we give back the $150. If we end up doing the job, then we don't even charge the 150. We just subtract that from whatever the overall cost is of the job.
Got it. Got it. Well, Kim, I really appreciate you being on today. This is such important information, and maybe we can get you back in a few months because I have a feeling many more people are going to want to hear this information. And you better stand by your phone. I have a feeling you're going to get a bunch of calls today.